Alright, so in the last video, which is part 2, we did the first part of blocking the figure, which is essentially just laying down a sheet of clay and embedding that into the aluminum foil. This stage is just yet another form of blocking, but we're going to pay a lot more attention to bulking up the figure, making the larger areas of the body larger, so the thinner parts that we've already done appear even thinner. So I'm starting with Zoroark's right leg, and from the knee to the thigh it's a pretty thick part of the limb, so just grabbed a piece of clay that's about the right size and I'm smoothing it on. And then I'll do the same thing for the next leg. So for this stage, I like to look at the character or the picture, not so much being concerned with all the surface details, but rather I look at the character like a topographical map. So what parts of the character need to stick out more, what would have a higher elevation. If I don't pay attention to that, then the figure's going to look pretty flat, more two-dimensional than three-dimensional. So right now I'm working on the chest, or the first part of his chest, which sticks out pretty far from the body. So I'm making that even bigger by adding about a 1/4 inch thick piece of clay to the front part of the chest, and then just smooth it in with your fingers to erase the lines, and then smooth over everything. Okay, now I'm gonna make the chest portion of the figure. And I noticed in the middle of it, there's kind of a crease, like a muscle crease. So to simulate that, I'm going to make these two kind of coin shapes, press them up into the figure, and then start to smooth it out. And I'm going to smooth everything except the center line, and that's going to give me that crease in the middle. It's like if they're two pectoral muscles coming together. And just smooth it all down. Probably 80% of the time spent is just smoothing. I haven't actually calculated that out, but it just seems like you're constantly smoothing. Here I'm trying to pinch in his stomach area just to make the chest part look a little bit bigger by pushing away material from the waist, or the stomach or the waist. Okay, now I'm going to work on his feet. So you'll notice he has no feet right now. His legs just end in the little the brass rods. What I'm gonna do is build the feet up around the bottom of the legs, because he kind of stands on his toes in a way. So I'm gonna build up a part on the back side of the leg, and then put a small piece down in the front part, and it's gonna look like he's wearing kind of weird looking like high heel platform shoes. But this part that I'll put on the front will be used to stick the claws into, and once they're in, then it'll look more like a big paw that he's standing on. Getting those back parts put in. Make sure that the heel sticks out enough so you can tell it's the back side of the foot. Now we'll put those pieces of clay on the front side of the foot. And this will be like the toe part. And it will also be used to stick the claws into. By the way, the claws I actually baked beforehand. There's a couple different ways you can do claws, and you can just take raw clay, make a claw shape, and put the raw clay onto the raw clay and smooth it in, and that's fine. Or you can bake the claws ahead of time, which makes them hard, and then they can just be stuck into raw clay. And I use both ways. I prefer the look of claws, teeth that have been baked and stuck into raw clay, because then it looks like it's protruding out of the body. When you blend in a raw clay claw, it looks a lot smoother, so it's harder to get that look like it's coming out of muscle or coming out of fur or whatever your figure is covered in. So I try and do use pre-baked claws, spikes, teeth. Sometimes I just get lazy and don't want to bake them ahead of time. And you can bake them in the oven, or if you have a heat gun. I just got the Furno 500 for it's by a company called Wagner. You can get them at Menards. I got that for Christmas, so I got to try it out on these, and it just takes a couple minutes going over small pieces of clay with the heat gun, and it bakes them enough to cool. When they cool, they'll be firm. Alright, so now finally get to see the baking block. So I've created his legs, and now I want to make sure that he actually can stand. So I've got this board that I've drilled a bunch of holes into, and found 2 holes that work for his stance, and set him onto there. So now you can see how the figure can stand on its own. Now, the question for what to do with his hair. I've made this big piece of foil, which I've wrapped in clay, or blocked out in clay. I cut that part just to make the video a little less long. But I've wrapped this big piece of foil in clay, and then I'm gonna start attaching it to his head and neck. The reason I'm using foil instead of just a solid piece of clay is, again, clay is way heavier than foil, and were I to put a big heavy piece of clay on his back, it might cause the figure to sag under the weight. So the foil again gives the illusion that there's this big solid piece of clay when really there's not that much clay, and lets the hair be nice and light. So now I'm just trying to get the positioning right. And taking a piece of clay and kind of mashed it between where the body and the hair meet. And that's going to be used to anchor on the hair. Meld those two parts together. So I'm smoothing that down. And I'll do that again on the other side, do that on the top part of his head. Now, I still want the body and the hair to be distinct, and the way I'm gonna make that happen, even though they're basically fused together, is I'll go in with my tool, a ribbon tool, and I'll basically dig out a little bit of clay to make it look like the two parts are separate. They're actually fused together. When I've got the body pretty much formed, I'll do, of course, a lot more smoothing. But I'll set the figure down on the block, kind of repose him. I like to make sure to spin the figure around so I can see all the sides, just make sure everything looks okay from all angles. And then we will be done with forming the body. And then it's on to the fun part where you get to make all the details. Thanks for watching.